In one of his blander pronouncements during the papal visit, Netanyahu mentioned on Monday that Jesus spoke Hebrew. There was nothing incorrect about Netanyahu's statement. Jesus was, after all, an Israeli Jew, but Francis couldn't take the truth. So he indelicately interrupted his host, interjecting Aramaic. Here's the exchange. Now, this is not the exchange. This is the greeting. Nice handshake, right? How did he greet Mahmoud Abbas? A Palestinian terrorist dedicated to the annihilation of the Jewish people gets a hug from the Pope. This is a prophetic significant event. Prophetically significant. It shows the world coming together against Israel and with murderous people. We're waiting for a world leader to emerge to kind of bring all this together. So when I talked to my friend, maybe 47 years ago, 30 out of 100 pastors would have talked about the prophetically significant event. I said, I doubt that 3 out of 1,000 will this week. And he said, John, you are being very, very generous with that estimate. This was a significant meeting. Here is the exchange between Netanyahu in Hebrew and the Pope in Spanish. But you'll be able to pick up the words. Yeshua. What he's saying is Jesus knew Hebrew, and he spoke in Hebrew. Caroline Glick says, Netanyahu was probably flustered. True, at the time, educated Jews spoke and wrote in Aramaic, and Jesus was educated, but the language of the people was Hebrew, and Jesus preached to the people in Hebrew. Netanyahu responded he spoke Aramaic, but he knew Hebrew. Reuters' write-up of the incident tried to explain away the Pope's rudeness and historical revisionism, asserting modern-day discourse about Jesus is complicated and often political. I really do like the way she writes. The report went on to delicately mention Palestinians sometimes describe Jesus as a Palestinian. Israelis object to that. Israelis object to that because it is a lie. The Palestinians and their Islamic and Western supporters de-Judaize Jesus and proclaim him Palestinian in order to libel the Jews and criminalize the Jewish state. It seems like it would be the job of the Bishop of Rome to set the record straight, but instead Francis' discourtesy indicated that at a minimum, he doesn't think that the fact of Jesus' Judaism should be mentioned in polite company. And then he went to the wall. And look at what's on this wall. Bethlehem, look, and there's a statement here. Now, listen, there's some dispute. This was a spontaneous thing that Francis did. He's just so happened, there's pictures of people spray painting a message to the Pope at the place where he just happened to decide to stop. There's a Palestinian pamphlet that was distributed to the media that showed where he was going to stop. So this was not instantaneous. That's a bunch of scubalon. One wag said this was in the Calgary Herald, a great editorial cartoon. The Pope, why this wall in Israel? Netanyahu, why this bulletproof glass in Popemobile? Good point. Caroline, consider first Francis' behavior at the Security Bureau. Reasonable people disagree about the contribution the security fence makes to the security of Israelis, but no one can reasonably doubt that it was built to protect Israelis from Palestinian terrorist murders. That's exactly why it's high in some places and not in others, to prevent sniper fire. And Francis ought to know this. Francis' decision to hold a photo op at the Security Bureau was an act of extreme hostility against Israel and the Jewish people. And she goes on to tell the story about 11 years ago, 5 people murdered by a Palestinian terrorist with the support of Fatah up in the northern part of Israel, along where the security barrier is in a kibbutz. At the time, she notes, Fatah praised the attack and on its website and pledged to conduct more assaults on Zionist colonizers and promised to continue targeting their children as well. She continues about the Pope. Had he actually cared about the cause of peace and nonviolence he claims to champion, Francis might have averred from stopping at the barrier, recognizing that doing so would defile the memory of the Ohioans and of hundreds of other Israeli Jewish families who were destroyed by Palestinian bloodlust and anti-Semitic depravity. Instead, Francis spontaneously got out of his popemobile, walked over to a section of the barrier, and reverentially touched it and kissed it as if it were the Wailing Wall. The graffiti on the section of the barrier Francis stopped at reinforced his anti-Semitic position. One of the slogans called for the embrace of the BDS campaign. That is nothing compared to the other slogan on the barrier, the one that equated the Palestinians in Bethlehem to Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto. In other words, it denied the Holocaust. By standing there, kissing the barrier with its Holocaust-denying slogan, Francis gave Vatican license to Holocaust denial. I agree. And this is what it says on the stage. Bethlehem looked like Warsaw Ghetto. That is where he stopped. That is where he put his hand on the wall. That is where he kissed the wall reverentially. Pope Francis then met with Fatah Chief Mahmoud Abbas at his presidential palace in Bethlehem. She goes on to talk about the fact that that used to be a Greek Orthodox church, but Arafat seized it. Now it's just the official residence of the Palestinian government. Abbas returned the favor by calling for Israel to release all Palestinian terrorists from Israeli prisons. And the Pope, who interrupted Netanyahu when he told an historic truth, said nothing. Nothing. And here's the meeting in the presidential palace. Now, the Latin patriarch had this to say at the Mass in Manger Square. Together with you, most holy Father, today we beg the child Jesus to expand his grotto to welcome and accommodate the many children who are victims of violence and injustice. How can we forget to pray for the many prisoners in overcrowded prisons? They hunger for a piece of bread, yearn for justice and peace, destitute for a welcoming home. We are not yet done with the present-day Herods. This was said at a religious service, this blood libel lie, who fear peace more than war, who dread the prosperity of families, and who are prepared to continue killing. That's the Latin patriarch of the Orthodox Church from Jerusalem. He said this, we, the descendants of the first shepherds. How many lies can you pile up in a sermon? In response to the invitation of the angels, we are with you in Bethlehem to adore the child and to pay tribute to his parents. And at the altar there, behind him, there's this painting, a mural of the Mary, Joseph, and the child, and the 3 wise men. I guess they're the pre-incarnate Pope Paul VI, John Paul II, and Benedict the 16th. But look at this. This is blasphemous. Jesus was a Jew. Caroline Glick was right. Do you see what they have the baby wrapped in? One of those Palestinian scarves. Look at what Joseph has on. It's one of those Palestinian scarves. This is the people that Lynn Hybels and other evangelicals go to Israel, go to Bethlehem in Israel, go to Bethlehem and engage in that nonsense down there called the, what is that stupid thing called? The conference that they have, Checkpoint, yeah, Christ at the Checkpoint. They're rewriting history. They don't care about the Bible. They don't care about truth. This is people losing their ability to reason. This is what happens in the end times. The nun. Yeah, it's probably St. Teresa of Avila or something. She's probably taken a break from one of her mystical dreams or something. Brian Schrager in the Jerusalem Post on Thursday or Friday had a great article, Identity Theft in Bethlehem, showing what they've done with these different pictures depicting scenes from the life of Christ that they've turned into Palestinian propaganda. So there the Pope stood, performing a mass in front of the Palestinian baby Jesus. Rather than condemn these remarks, Francis echoed them. So if they thought the Latin patriarch was wrong or bad, this is what Francis said. Who are we as we stand before the child Jesus? Who are we standing before today's children? Are we like Mary and Joseph who welcomed Jesus and cared for him with the love of a father and mother? Or are we like Herod who wanted to eliminate him? He continued the theme. During his visit Monday to Jerusalem, Francis embraced the Palestinian Mufti of Jerusalem, Sheikh Mohammed Hussein. Departing from his scripted remarks, which called for the Pope to refer to the Mufti and his associates as dear friends, Francis called them his dear brothers. Hussein has been condemned by the U.S. and EU for his calls for the annihilation of Jews in the name of Islam. In 2012, Hussein said it was the destiny of Muslims to kill Jews, who he claims are subhuman beasts and the enemies of Allah. He has also praised suicide bombers and said their souls tell us to follow their path. Francis didn't condemn him. Francis didn't correct him in the middle of a sentence. Francis stridently condemned the anti-Jewish attacks in Brussels and Paris. And during his ceremonial visits to Yad Vashem, the Wailing Wall, and the Terror Victims Memorial, he said similarly appropriate things, but all of his statements ring hollow and false in light of his actions. Israelis and Jews around the world need to be aware of what is happening. Francis is leading the Catholic Church in a distressingly anti-Jewish direction. I would disagree with her that he's reviving what's been there all along.